Far Cry 5 can be a bit of a mess. Its AI is spotty, its narrative is all over the place, and most of its plot is told inches from the camera by characters with unclear goals and confusing motivations. But still, I adore this game, because this is one of Ubisoft's best open worlds yet. Flashback to 1 year ago. Games published by Ubisoft were easily recognizable. The UIs were cluttered, the screens were littered with waypoints, and the minimaps were covered in a multitude of icons, collectibles, and miscellaneous tasks. But lately, that hasn't been the case. With last year's Assassin's Creed Origins, Ubisoft Montreal shied away from its usual formula. It removed much of the crowded UI and completely erased the infamous minimap. Origins emphasized exploration not by giving you tasks to complete, but by showing you distant structures on the horizon, and plenty of things to distract you along the way. It encouraged discovery without an array of icons across the screen. And now, with Far Cry 5, Ubisoft continues that shift from artificial checklist to digital adventure. It marks a promising move in the publisher's evolution, as well as the futures of its open-world franchises. Changes in Far Cry 5 come on both a macro and micro level. As was the case with Origins, Far Cry 5 eschews a minimap in favor of a compass. This change, lifted from the Elder Scrolls, may seem minor, but it makes the world feel more organic. It takes your eyes off the UI and directs them toward your surroundings. By removing the whole "climb a tower to reveal more of the map" trope, Far Cry 5 goes a step further in encouraging you to just wander around. Ubisoft Montreal uses sound design to its advantage as well. Many times throughout my playthrough, I would hear a gunshot in the distance. Upon following it, I might come across the expected firefight. Other times, I might stumble upon a hostage situation gone bad. Less frequently still, I would come across a lone hunter skinning her prey. Each scenario was as exciting as the next, precisely because they all started the same way, but ended very differently. Ubisoft has been calling many of its games anecdote factories for a while now. The games have numerous connected systems you can toy with, allowing you to manipulate your enemies, abilities, or environments. The fun comes from watching them interact, or just as often, seeing them collide. In Far Cry 5, these water cooler moments are more frequent and thrilling.
Here comes that holy fire!
Now, I think Far Cry 5 is Ubisoft's best anecdote factory specifically because of the changes it makes to exploration. By placing more emphasis on self-driven discovery, like Breath of the Wild did last year, everything feels more natural. You learn about characters through rumors at the local bar. You find new hunting grounds via signs along the road. You find an isolated base jumping location, travel through its canyons, and learn exactly why the locals named it Devil's Drop. This leads me to Far Cry 5's subtle yet effective environmental storytelling. In this version of Montana, most of the locals have doomsday bunkers with ample amounts of canned food and bottled water. I'm reminded of Fallout 3 while exploring these subterranean hideouts. Scribbled notes suggest what happened in the final days before the homeowners were captured by the Eden's Gate cult. Ubisoft Montreal expertly makes use of context throughout this world. Take this side quest as another example. In the early hours of my playthrough, I saw this window, peppered with bullet holes. Shortly after, I heard the source of these markings, a cultist firing his weapon at the hut. After killing him, I went to investigate the building, finding a note he had written, telling passerby he had crossed a pond to try to shoot the lock off of the hut's door. Not only did this explain his antics, but also hinted that there might be something valuable inside. It turns out, there was. On the surface, this encounter may seem basic, but consider this. I could have stumbled upon it in 5 different ways. I could have read the note. I could have heard the cultist gunshots. I could have seen the locked door from his vantage point. I could have heard a rumor about the weapons stash from an NPC across the map, or, as was actually the case, I could have seen the telltale markings around the window. The quest works no matter your entry point. That, to me, is a very well-designed open-world quest. This is in no way the only mission designed to fit seamlessly into Far Cry 5's Montana, but it is the only one I want to dissect here, because most of the fun comes from finding these moments yourself and watching them all unfold. None of this mentions your AI companions or guns for hire. Harking back to Far Cry 2, these allies lend even more flavor to your personal stories. You develop your own connections to these people as you spend time with them. My friend Luke Smith may be dumb as hell, take Exhibit A, but he's been with me through thick and thin. He's that friend I can't help hang out with despite how often he gets me in trouble. You and me may have both played Far Cry 5, but you might never have met Luke Smith, and you probably never will. Finally, we come to Far Cry 5's main narrative. As I said before, I'm conflicted. Too much of it is exposition, spoken through religious diatribes straight to your face. It's also a mishmash of about 15 different themes, none of which are given enough time to pay off or even develop in some cases. But I do respect the main storyline for how you come across it. As with the rest of Far Cry 5's world, these plot points aren't waypoints on a minimap or boxes to be checked off a list. They occur naturally. You're captured somewhere in the wilderness, probably as you're pursuing some other goal, and taken to the necessary story mission. I'm sure this annoys a lot of people who would just rather ignore the main story, but I like it. One of the biggest problems in open world games is how to tell an overarching narrative, when many, if not most players, will be focused on finding their own anecdotes. Far Cry 5's plot may not be perfect, but as far as how Ubisoft weaves it into the greater world, it's on the right track. This is my biggest overarching sentiment for the game in general. It's a promising shift for a great series. Its focus on discovery and organic exploration make me excited for Far Cry's future and the future of Ubisoft open worlds in general. The publisher's internal studios have been experimenting with this sandbox formula for years, introducing new features and design philosophies as they go. They keep the ones that work and they discard those that don't. The animal commands in Far Cry 4 became the centerpiece of Far Cry Primal. Naval warfare introduced in Assassin's Creed 3 became a full-fledged game in Black Flag. And now, the self-driven exploration of Assassin's Creed Origins has become, for me, the defining factor of Far Cry 5. And I'm excited to see what comes next.